Hello and welcome. We're so glad you're here for another mental health and wellness chat. I'm Brittany and I'm one of your VC Counseling Center counselors, and I'm here with
Lila Stanley, your campus public relations and social media specialist.
And today we're going to dive into something that most of us do without really even thinking about it. Doom scrolling. So you know that endless late night scroll through bad news, chaotic posts, or depressing headlines that just leaves you feeling totally drained instead of informed. So we're going to break down why our brains are so hooked on bad news, how it messes with our mental health, and most importantly, how to set some realistic, doable boundaries with tech that won't make you feel like you're missing out. So if your screen time's getting out of hand or you're just feeling overwhelmed every time you pick up your phone, this one's for you. So, okay, my favorite part, right? The Freudian question for the department, because you're here representing the department to a degree, so I get to ask this question. So, Lila, what if your department was a coffee order? What would it be, and how many espresso shots are we talking realistically? Because you guys never stop working at the end of the day.
And my instinct wants to go to like the Panera lemonade that like kills people. You know, the like super caffeinated drink that Panera, like that's kind of, but not coffee.
Oh my gosh.
I would say probably a brown sugar shaken espresso. That's been my go-to lately. So you've got like some sweet, but also like really powerful espresso under the surface.
I love that.
At least 2 shots of espresso.
At least minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my other alternative question was, what is your department's Roman Empire? Like something that you guys think about at least once a week. And I was sitting there trying to think of what your answer would be, and I can only imagine.
Probably Captain Vic.
Captain
at
Vic.
this point. Yeah, which is pretty lame. That or like call to actions, like very lame marketing stuff.
You can tell that I've worked here and like worked with you guys enough that like even last night I was trying to draft a text message to a friend and I was getting my husband to like proofread it, and I was like, okay, so what do you think? And he's like, I don't know, like it's kind of weird at the end. And I was like, do you feel like that's because there's no call to action in the text message? And he was like, what are you saying to me? He's like, who says things like that?
It's such a buzzword, but it's true. Always.
Okay, so love your answer. Let's get on to doom scrolling. So doom scrolling, let's define that. What is doom scrolling? So given that you're a social media specialist, I felt like you'd have a really unique perspective on this, because not only are you a human and most of us use social media, but it's also part of your job requirements to also have to use social media. So I want to hear your perspective too. And I have like a formal definition of what doom scrolling is, but what do you feel like for you doom scrolling is?
I think for me, it's just getting sucked down the rabbit hole and like you sit down on the couch and you're going to watch a show, but you end up on your phone and it's like 2 hours later and nothing productive has happened and you're more stressed out than when you started.
Yeah.
I think that's probably for me the most common thing, which I'm working on boundaries. I think boundaries are our first line of defense as far as combating doom scrolling, but just falling down that rabbit hole, getting sucked down into another layer of hopelessness and despair and the news and the world at large, which is also not our current reality.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good, like, practical definition of what doom scrolling is. And even if we look like formally, it's a vicious cycle. So where users are going to find themselves stuck in a pattern of seeking negative information, no matter how bad that news is. So obviously, since online platforms are very well aware of what captivates us most, and they use their algorithm systems, they serve us with the content that will get our attention, considering our previous history on the internet. So these algorithms are tailored. There's a lot of good documentaries on this on Netflix. It's the only reason I understand anything about algorithms at this point in my life.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of math and information that goes behind what is showing up on your feed, especially when you just kind of sit there and mindlessly scroll. And a lot of times, a great example of this that I can think is whenever, you start on one post and it's funny, and I usually get there, I'll start on like funny cat videos or something, and I'm having a great time. And then you'll get maybe one video that is about something news related or something a little bit more darker. And then you watch it linger on it for a period of time. And then now your algorithm shifts so that you're starting to get those every other video and then every single video. And then you just fall down that rabbit hole and look up and it's been, 4 hours and you're like, oh my gosh, where's my entire evening gone?
Yep.
So why is it, I think it's good to start here with a fundamental question of like, why do our brains love bad news so much and why it's hard to stop scrolling? Because you can make an argument, right, that, well, we just need to have better self-control. If we just have better self-control to not look at these things and scroll through them and watch them, then obviously it wouldn't be a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reason why we keep scrolling. And I think one of the biggest things from a psychology perspective is that our brain evolves to pay more attention to threats than to neutral or positive things. And that's a survival mechanism, right? Like if you see you're out on a beautiful hike and you see a snake in the forest, you should pay attention to that snake because that is the threat to your health and safety in that moment, more so than the pretty flowers or maybe the deer over there. You're going to see the thing that is a threat to you. So it's the same thing on social media. We're going to respond and pay more attention to things that feel like a threat to us uniquely than we are to positive things. Thousands of years ago, when we notice a danger, predator, social rejection, whatever, these things keep us alive. So the brain gets really good at seeing bad news. So today, it's just slightly different, right? These threats are different because we live in modern times, right? War, climate change, economic collapse, campus drama, like all these things. The brain still prioritizes them because they're a threat, but it's just a different type of threat than like a life or death situation.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain doesn't really know the difference between a tiger and a terrifying tweet. It's kind of the same thing ultimately. So where doom scrolling can sometimes feel like we're doing something productive. And I see this a lot, right? I have a lot of students that will come in and they'll say, I'm feeling issues with my boundaries with tech and with news because there's a lot of news right now that's upsetting for me. And I don't know how to, turning a blind eye and just not looking feels like I'm just choosing to not care and choosing to be ignorant. I don't want to be that, but I also, the more that I read, the more that I pay attention, the more anxious I get, the more depressed I get, the more panicky I get. So I think that this is, what are your thoughts? What are your experiences with things like that?
Definitely so. I think that anxiety spiral is easy to fall down when you're talking about the news. And in a previous life, I actually worked as a news producer for about 5 years before I got into public relations, the good news of it all. Yeah. But that was a challenge. Just how do I leave work at home when your brain and your thoughts and your job is pretty much just about covering bad news and all the traumatic things happening in your community and in life. So I've tried to really focus on what I can control. And whether that's related to politics, you can vote. There are simple, I think, productive steps that we can all take. But at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do. And all I can do is control me and what I'm putting out into the world. And that's really all we can do.
I love that perspective, though, because I like the refocus on, because I think that's where we get caught up, is that I can't control this. There's nothing I can do about this. This is happening in the world independent of me. Even if I single-handedly went there and tried to do something, there's nothing that I could do. So I like that to combat the hopelessness, like refocusing. Okay, so what can I do short-term in this moment that would matter to me? And at least make a difference on, even if it's on a microscopic scale.
Yeah.
Because refocusing can be really good in those situations and very productive.
Yeah. And when you feel like you're doing something at a local level, that's where you're going to make the most impact anyways. We can't do anything about what's happening in Washington, D.C., but we can do something about what's happening in our hometown.
Well, and I feel like you see that a lot too with like first responders, police specifically, right? That they see the most violent things happening in the area. So it's more primed in their memory. Like these things are happening regardless. It's just someone like me may not see them nearly as often as someone who's directly responding to those things. So it's like normal to a degree to get a little bit more like disenfranchised or like depressed about it because you're actively having to confront it every second of every day, which is the same as you working in news. I can imagine very similar. Yeah.
After a while, it was like, I got to find something else to do.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. And, in chaotic or uncertain times, like our brain really just wants answers and a feeling of control, like you said. So scrolling can sometimes feel like searching for safety in our feed. But a lot of times, instead of giving clarity, we just end up spiraling. So our brains, and when we spiral like that, a lot of times, if you've listened to our stress podcast, your brain just gets flooded with cortisol. Your system gets flooded, the stress hormone, and that leads to a physical response to the stress. And a lot of times once we have the physical symptoms of stress, it starts its own cycle of like maintaining itself to a degree.
That adrenaline is kind of addicting in an odd way too. Like your brain, once it gets going, it's hard to stop.
Yeah. And it's the same thing too, even with dopamine mining and like ADHD and social media. Like it's just mindless scrolling. Like they know what they're doing.
Yes, they do.
And so, okay, I will defer to you here. Give us some insight on algorithms. What is this? How does it work? If I'm someone who has no understanding, never watched a documentary, people talk about algorithms all the time, but they don't really explain, like, what is that?
Gosh, it's like, I know for me, I feel like they know me better than I know myself sometimes, and it's really alarming. But they just look at your behaviors and your patterns basically, and they come up with a profile of you and what they think you'll like, and they're very good at it.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at your feed, if you've watched videos about anything political, I mean, that's going to continue to come up on your feed. If you watch videos about cute cats, that's going to continue to come up on your feed. So you get a weird like buffet of the best and the worst parts of you on your feed constantly at all times. And it's overstimulating and it's overwhelming.
Yeah. And my favorite thing is whenever you talk to someone about something just moments before, and then all of a sudden your feed's nothing but that. I'm like, they're so listening.
They are so listening.
FBI agent is definitely coding that in there.
Yes.
Keeping it going.
They know.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay. And that, that makes, it can be, algorithms are so complicated from my understanding. Like I said, there's a handful of documentaries that kind of break down really like what this is and what it looks like and why it can be problematic, especially moving forward in the future. But I think that's a really good like introduction to understand what it is. And it's important to recognize too that, like we said, even when this is how the doom scrolling can kind of get started. And then, like we said, it's obviously our choice to continue scrolling. But ultimately this is kind of just how the whole thing gets started.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of already answered the question, but I mean, your take on how platforms are designed to keep us scrolling.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was thinking back. I remember being a senior in high school and signing up for Facebook. I think we're sort of the same age group.
Oh, I started with MySpace.
MySpace? For sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Which is even more terrifying because they wanted you to rank your friends.
Yeah, that was cutthroat. It was
psychological
warfare. Kids these days have no idea.
They don't know. They don't. But I remember signing up in my senior year of high school and just sort of growing up with it in an odd way and seeing it change and seeing us change with it. And it has certainly evolved. I mean, I guess when they know you for 20 years, like they've got a lot of information on you, and it can be a toxic relationship if you don't get a handle on it, for sure.
Yeah. No, and I think that is something interesting to consider too, is how a lot of us have used this over the course of a lifetime, right? I feel like our generation was one of the last generations where
we can remember life without it.
And I didn't have it until probably I was 16, I feel like, was when I got my MySpace page. And then everyone moved to Facebook, and I reluctantly moved when MySpace shut down. And
it's a shame.
And it's like you've had it. I feel like for us, there was a period of time without it, where I feel like for a lot of people these days, there's not much time without it for them. So it's almost like trying to imagine not having something like that, I feel like would be really challenging.
Yeah, I can't anymore. And crazy to think they've known you your whole life in a weird way.
I'd love to see. I don't want to see my file, honestly. If I had that option, I don't think I'd want to see it.
Delete.
Oh my gosh. So we know that there's been so many studies. I know you guys have heard all of these just existing in the world. You don't have to look for these to see them, to see the studies, that there's so many of them showing that the more that we engage social media, the more that we're on our phones, the more that we doom scroll specifically, it obviously has a significant impact on our mental health, right? There's so many angles of this that it does. It can impact every angle of mental health and wellness. Anxiety, scrolling, your For You page, all of these things facilitate anxiety and the cycle of anxiety. Same thing with sleep issues. I can't tell you how many people come in with sleep issues because we're on our phone rather than sleeping. Attention span complications or issues, shortening attention spans, hopelessness, specifically with doom scrolling. I mean, it can and it does have a significant impact on mental health. Obviously not arguing that doom scrolling is going to, social media is going to make you depressed, or social media is going to make anxiety happen, but it can definitely facilitate those emotions.
For sure.
And I feel like there is obviously, depending on what our feed is and depending on what videos we consume, sometimes it can facilitate anxiety, panic, doom scrolling, and sometimes it can facilitate self-help or positive things too.
Yeah.
But then I feel like you get complicated because then there's toxic self-help
it's all mixed in
out
together.
there. Yes. Yeah. And there's things where you can't easily fact check the information that you're ingesting.
And you don't know what to believe, and you're kind of back where you started.
Exactly. Yeah. It's tough now.
Yeah.
So, okay, what do you feel like are some signs that students should look for if they think that doom scrolling is impacting their mental health?
I think love it or hate it, that Sunday screen time report can really give you a good indicator of where you're at. I really always think about turning mine off, because every Sunday I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? This is embarrassing. But I mean, that's a good way to just kind of do a gut check and see, wow, I'm spending 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 4 hours a day. What am I doing? What am I accomplishing? I would say, yeah, if you feel like you're just losing track of time, if you sit down on the couch and you look up and it's 3 hours later and I didn't do my homework and I didn't make dinner, and you start to have your day-to-day life suffer because of that, that's a strong indicator that we need to look at boundaries. We need to start prioritizing ourselves. We need to make sure that we're putting our mental health in front of our phone.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think for me too, one thing that I'll notice is almost challenging myself, like, why can't I pay attention to what I'm doing right now? Like, I'm very bad at starting a video on the TV, like a show or whatever it might be. And then, 5 minutes in, I reach for my phone and I want to start scrolling on my phone. And I'll stop and ask myself, like, why can't I just watch the show that I'm watching? Like, when did my attention span get to this point that I have to be juggling 4 things at one time in order to feel, I don't even know what I'm feeling in that moment, because it's usually anxiety if I'm being real. Like, that causes more anxiety.
And who asked us to do that?
Exactly.
No one.
And it's like, what am I going to gain from this scenario? And I think that can be a good one too, is even asking yourself in those moments where you do go reach for your phone, using it almost as exploring a trigger, right? Because for example, like, am I reaching for my phone right now because I'm anxious or worried about something and I'm trying to distract myself? Am I reaching for my phone because I genuinely need to check this text message? Because I feel like those are 2 very different scenarios. Or I have like a genuine purpose to be on my phone right now.
Yeah.
Or am I just reaching for it out of habit?
Yeah.
Can be one good way to look at it too.
Definitely. I've always noticed my sleep improves when I put down my phone and I read before I go to bed, as annoying as that is.
That would exhaust my eyes to the point that I would be like, I want to close these.
Yes, it works quick. Unfortunately, people always say go outside and take a walk, but it's true.
Yeah.
It does help.
And I would challenge you in those moments too, even looking at, what am I doing right now? What am I supposed to be doing right now? And why can't I wholeheartedly focus and commit to this thing that I'm supposed to be doing right now? I feel like this isn't sleep hygiene specific video, obviously, but I feel like another good tip even is not using your phone in bed at all. Like, setting that boundary with ourselves too, of like, when I get into my bed, I'm going to plug my phone in, put it on the side table or on the floor or whatever, and I'm not going to touch it until I wake up in the morning. Social media, and you honestly really have touched on some of the next topics too, social media connection and isolation, right? Like, the more connected that we become on social media, sometimes that can lead to further real world isolation. Especially like you said, if I'm hanging out with friends and I'm on my phone and I'm scrolling and I'm looking through things rather than engaging with people in the moment, sometimes that can hurt relationships around me. Obviously it's hard to actually truly meaningfully connect with another person whenever I'm multitasking and doing 100 things at the same time versus sitting down and looking at each other and having a face-to-face conversation. And sometimes this isolation can even obviously hurt mental health in the long run too. We know that isolation is connected to most mental health disorders, and the more isolated and alone that we feel, the less likely that we are to improve, our symptoms are to improve, the less likely that we are to have good mental health outcomes in the long run. So even looking at that and asking myself, who do I connect with in a day? I think our spouses are a really great place to start with this. If you have a spouse, of how much of your day, when you do get home and you do finally see them and finally get to engage with them, how much of that are you genuinely focused and connecting in that moment versus both of you scrolling mindlessly, or like I said, turning on a Netflix show and both of us scrolling mindlessly on our phones on the couch together, which is obviously better than not doing it, but ultimately, like, you're not connecting in that moment,
Quality time in 2025.
And it's the same thing too with friends or family or anyone.
Yeah. It is weird to look around the dinner table and see everyone kind of on their phone and not connecting with each other. So definitely something to consider.
Yeah. So, okay, Lila, direct question for you. How do you balance your job being constantly online with setting personal boundaries? Because I can only imagine working with social media at work.
Yeah, that is the question of all questions. I think it's evolved over the years. You do have to have 24/7 accessibility because anything could happen at any given moment. So you just kind of live with that. Phone has knowledge that your phone needs to be in reach and you need to be connected to it. But I can also go see a movie and turn my phone off for a couple hours.
Yeah.
You know, I try to make space for myself to be able to separate from my phone in a healthy way, whether that's like doing a puzzle or playing with nieces and nephews. It's important to have that space for yourself to be able to check out, but also be able to check in when you need to. Yeah, I try to kind of focus on, I think access should be earned. And for some reason in society, we've all decided that everything has to be shared at all times. And that can be really difficult to juggle. And just know that you don't have to overshare or share anything that's going on in your personal life. I've pivoted to really just using it for work because that is my healthy flow on social. And my personal life, on social media, I just kind of scroll and like things and look at recipes and cat videos, and that's a much more healthy space for me. So I think just deciding what's healthy for you, what are you getting out of it that's positive, and just remembering that you set your own boundaries and you don't have to share anything that you don't want to. You don't feel pressured. And when you start comparing yourself to other people, just remember that that is not their reality. That's what they want you to see.
And I love that quote. I can't remember the full thing, but it's basically, I mean, you're seeing the highlight reel of other people. You're seeing what other people want to see. And you can see it even in your own posting habits, depending how much you share on social media.
For sure.
You know, you don't share the ugly things. You don't share, the best thing I can think is like a hike, right? You don't share the boring parts of a hike. You share the cool looking parts, which are maybe like 5% of the total time that you're there.
You share the top of the mountain, right? You don't share the journey that it took to get there.
That was so poignant. I like that. That was good. That was good.
Thank you.
Mic drop. We've had several mic drops on here lately. Yeah.
Not bad.
So you say you watch cat videos off topic. What is your favorite social media cat?
Oh man, R.I.P. Grumpy Cat for sure. That one I feel like it was so iconic. I don't know if anyone can top it.
Yeah. Have you seen Merv?
I don't know if
he's a Siamese. He's so hilarious. He has Charles downstairs, who's like a shirtless guy who's a gardener. And it's not a he. She's in love with him, and there's like a whole subplot. But
please send me
Merv
these.
growls and talks, like straight up will say like I love you, like zooming around the house. It's so cute.
I'm sold. Please send me that.
Siamese cats, so that's my kryptonite. But
yeah. My cat Luna, I just enjoy her. I don't share her with the world on social, but she's my buddy. And sometimes I just remind myself, just sit down and pet her and put the phone down for sure.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, and you've kind of touched on this, but do you feel like there are any other simple changes that you've made with tech that it can have a significant improvement on mental health or your mental health?
I have gone through and deleted apps on my phone. Like maybe you don't need TikTok on your phone. Maybe you just need it on your iPad. Like maybe we can make some separation between work and personal life balance. Like I've gone through and just weeded out apps every now and then and been like, no, I'm on this too much. I can bring it back in a month and see if I'm doing better. But that's something I've done that I feel like has helped. I've just taken stock of my apps and seen what's productive and what's good for me and what's not.
Yeah. And I feel like, too, another thing that I like is, at least on the iPhone, you can hide apps off of your home screen. I've liked that a lot. I hide everything that's not necessary, like doctor's apps or whatever. Those are necessary apps, bank app, But like the social media, the other things that I don't necessarily need, I just having them out of sight in that way can sometimes help breaking habits of just like mindlessly clicking and scrolling, too.
And don't be afraid to hit that unfollow button. If you're maybe connected to something that you feel like is hurting your mental health, is bringing you down. I mean, unfollow, block, whatever we have to do to turn that around.
Yeah. And I think it starts too with taking an inventory of, like you said, we can start with the screen reports and look at, okay, what apps am I using in excess? And then even within those individual apps, really thinking critically about what I'm consuming right now and the impact that it's having on me. Like every time that I open Instagram, am I filled with a sense of anxiety and panic? I feel like that's a good cue of, okay, why is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, you can never use Instagram, but it's more of a question of, what, like you said, what changes can I make to my feed here that might be a little bit healthier for me? Or is it best for me to not be on this at all and just delete it and detox from it?
Yeah. I've done that with Facebook before, where I've taken a couple of years break and then come back to it in a better headspace. So
I don't know what it is about Facebook, but I feel like for me, it's the text-based aspect of it that is stressful. Whereas something like Instagram is just pictures. I feel like it's easier to get pictures and videos. I feel like it's easier, and you have to actually manually look at the text. I feel like it's easier to regulate more positive things on that versus Facebook. I feel like it's so you get sucked in.
Ads and everything now too. It's I feel like I never see anybody I know that I'm friends with. It's
you never see their updates.
No, at all.
I remember back in the day when Facebook, your feed was literally just the people that you're following posting about the Coke that they bought on Tuesday or something.
You could write on their wall. They even let us poke each other, which is kind of weird. But
I'm glad we got rid of that.
Yeah, same. So some of this progress is positive.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay. So I think that this is the real question is can students, and I feel like this is why I wanted Lila to come talk about this specifically, because I get it. Like as a student, we have to be online for school to a degree. And then also for social life, this day and age, I'm obviously older than a lot of you guys listening to this. Like, I can empathize and understand how everyone is on social media. I get it. But how do we do this, be online for the things we have to be online for, but also still have these boundaries while maintaining school and friend life too,
Man, that's the question, isn't it? I feel like for me, a lot of this always comes down to time management, which is always, I think, difficult for anyone, but especially a college student where you're working full time or you've got kids at home and you're trying to study. And we just have to decide ultimately what's the most important here. Do I need to study for my psych test tomorrow, or do I need to scroll on Instagram for 2 hours tonight?
Am I trying to avoid studying by scrolling on Instagram?
Yeah. Love to procrastinate, and that is like such a unfortunate tool, and it can definitely take you down the path there. But I would lean into time management. Just I have to map out my day sometimes. I'll write down a schedule, like this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Is sometimes the most important.
And I think I would challenge that it is realistic to be online for these things. Like the question even said, I think it comes down to careful, conscious boundaries about these things, right? I mean, you can have social media and scroll every once in a while in order to keep up with your friends versus mindlessly scrolling on a For You page. I think there's a big difference between those two things. And, same thing even with school. I mean, thankfully, there's not a lot of schools or colleges that require social media use in order to be successful in it. A lot of it is apps and websites that we, as a college, provide. And there's not a lot of ads or mindless scrolling involved in any of that. A lot of it is very straightforward. But it's okay. If you could redesign social media for mental wellness, what would you change?
Gosh, it seems like a low-hanging fruit answer, but I feel like we all need a timer.
Yeah, force built-in timer.
Yeah. Definitely. I know Instagram tried by taking away the number of likes a few years ago. That was sort of their, I think, effort on improving people's mental health. I don't know how effective it was, but I think ultimately that timer aspect where we all have a capacity every day for what we can hold. And if Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is that you use could know we were at capacity and know to turn it off, that would be my wish there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I like your suggestion about the timer limit, which I'm pessimistic, but I feel like that's also unrealistic because if you're not using the app, then they're not making money, which is the goal at the end of the day. But I do like that and that can even be an internal skill, though, would be my challenge of checking in with yourself emotionally throughout the day and asking, is this bout that I'm about to do on Instagram going to benefit me, or does it have more potential to hurt me at this particular moment? And like kind of even engaging with yourself what your internal limit is right now.
Yeah.
Can be a good compromise. And, so do you feel like there are any particular identifiable red flags of feeds? So like any particular types of posts or types of videos, whatever, that could trigger that maybe we do need to take a step back? I feel like for me, it's whenever I start getting political posts.
Definitely. That's the first thing that comes to
here.
mind. Yeah. Any sort of like probably news content, unfortunately, I would say. Anything that makes you feel bad. Yeah. Anything that brings you down, anything that makes you start to question reality or your decisions. Those are easy to stumble upon, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think it's fun. I have an example, actually. I think it's funny because sometimes I'll purposefully dig in my feed for mental health related posts or something to get ideas for this or topic ideas or whatever it might be. And the other day I was digging through, and one of the posts that I saw was basically saying along the lines of like, if your For You page has had nothing but the whole Coldplay concert thing, then you need to reevaluate your feed.
Same, girl.
And I felt really called out and seen. But to be, whose feed was that not on?
I mean, it was
the
everywhere.
first of the day, but I'm just saying, like, and you know, I think that falls in line with kind of what you're saying too, of, you know, asking yourself, the information that I'm ingesting right now, does it have anything to do with family or friends? Does it have anything to do with the goal or the purpose of me having this platform? And if it doesn't, that could even be a red flag sign too.
Yeah.
But I think for me too, even posts designed to elicit an emotional response is a good red flag for me, that this is just clickbaity at the end of the day, that this is, okay, how have I gotten this far into a rabbit hole where this is the content that I'm being suggested right now?
Or like the commercial that'd be on at 2 a.m, the like Sarah McLachlan in the Arms of an Angel, pet commercials, like anything sad like that. I'm like, no, we've gone too far.
And I feel so old when I'm watching like Prime or something and the commercials have like a QR code on them now, and I'm like, how did we get here? How did we get here with QR codes on commercials?
They're everywhere.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So okay. Coming around to wrapping things up, right? The setting boundaries without going completely to cold turkey, because I feel like for most people, if my thought is, well, I'm just going to detox, obviously good for you. Detox, delete everything, super simple, straightforward, right? But maybe I'm a person who doesn't necessarily want to go completely cold turkey, but I'm just kind of exploring what boundaries would be good or realistic for me. So what are some of your thoughts? What are some good boundaries that we could start with?
I think definitely not checking first thing in the morning when we wake up, which is so hard to do. I don't know why that's our first instinct, but we just want to get caught up. But I think just taking the morning to at least check in with yourself first before we start getting overstimulated and inundated with news and whatever's happening out there.
And I like that too, because it's almost like you say check in with yourself, but it can even be as simple as doing a morning routine mindfully and thoughtfully, right? So going in, doing your makeup, your hair. Sorry, I threw my phone.
Okay.
Skincare, whatever it might be, but consciously focusing on doing those things, even as simple as brushing your teeth or consciously picking out your outfit. I like that. I think that's a good boundary to start with too.
Yeah, same thing before bed probably as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. I've talked about this on some of the other podcasts too, but you know, looking at your phone screen, especially if you don't have it set to do nighttime mode where it alters the color of the screen, that can interrupt sleep cycles. Same thing too, especially if you're someone who's prone to anxious thoughts or worry or overthinking whenever you do lay down in the dark like that. Sometimes using our phone in those moments can just spiral even more thoughts. So that can keep us awake. And obviously when our brain has a constant stimuli, it's hard for it to shift into sleep mode. So not using your phone at all when we're in bed can be a really great boundary to start with. And I mean, ultimately, same thing with micro boundaries, right? So timers, app limits, no phone zones or times. One of the things that we've been trying to do in our house is when I get home, because I get home last out of everyone, when I get home, everyone kind of puts their phone on the counter. And it's not that you can't use it. If you have a need and a reason to use it. But we're just trying to make a conscious effort to not have it near, so it's not as easy to just grab and use, if that makes sense. So those micro boundaries can be really good too. And then even to redesigning your feed. So like you said, unfollow, mute, curate healthier spaces, being conscious of what is in your feed, or even starting a new, I'm over here swiping like I'm in a starting a whole new little side, but I don't know the proper terminology. I'm old, but
like a Finsta?
Like like you're scrolling in one little rabbit hole and then you swipe off and then you go to a different one and start a fresh rabbit hole. Just starting a whole new thing.
Reset your algorithm for good.
There you go. Yeah. And then, even using tech positively, right? So there's a lot of really great apps for mood tracking. I like a lot of them because they have pictures, and I'm apparently a toddler in my brain, but I love the pictures because I can kind of pick which smiley face aligns with me today and then take notes about how or why. And then a lot of the apps even will give you suggestions on coping or things that you could do in this moment to kind of help too. And then scheduling breaks too, from tech or even just from your phone or even from specific apps. And ultimately, the goal here is it's not necessarily about quitting technology, because technology improves our lives in so many
Yeah,
ways.
it's true.
I don't even know who I would be today without ChatGPT at this
I
point.
know.
It's just about using these
Yeah.
things intentionally, and avoiding just habitual use and actually shifting to like conscious, intentional use of social media and things.
Absolutely.
Well, any other thoughts, final concerns, comments, anything like that?
Oh man, thank you for having me. And I would just share that you have the power ultimately. So it's up to you. Don't let anybody else think that you have to follow this page or watch this content. What you have on your feed is up to you.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today in your go-to space for honest conversations about mental health and well-being. We're your hosts today, Brittany
And Lila.
And we're so glad that you spent part of your day with us. Remember, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body. Be kind to yourself, reach out if you need support, and know that you're never alone. Until next time, take care and take a deep breath.